What's up, guys? Welcome back to the RanWhenParked YouTube channel. Now, I've been kind of teasing you guys for a while in some of these videos saying I have another car that we're going to start working on soon, another project, and I'm sure some of you noticed that it was sitting on a trailer next to my shop in the background of a lot of different videos. And as you saw from the thumbnail on this, that project is a classic Landcruiser, an FJ40 Landcruiser. It's a 72, the one in the picture at least. But in order for me to get into that, I think I need to tell you guys a little backstory. Now, this might get a little boring for some of you, but I think others are going to appreciate it because we're going to be working on that thing for a while. It's going to be a lot of videos, so I wanted to tell you guys how this whole thing got started. Now, I wasn't filming and wasn't doing the YouTube thing when I got that. It was only like a year and a half ago, but I just started doing this, 3 months ago or something like that. So it's only going to be pictures. So I'm going to try to make this as entertaining as possible, but I wanted to tell the story either way. So we start with the FJ40s. So I've been an FJ40 guy forever. I've been obsessed with these things. My first car was an FJ40. I don't want to mess with the camera right now, but the front end of it's actually hanging on the wall in my garage up to my right here. I'll show you guys that eventually. I got one when I was 14. I've had like 8, I think, ever since. At one point I had 5 FJ40s at the same time. So I got rid of them when I was like 19, 20 years old. But the last one I had, I met my now wife when I had it, and she really liked it. And recently, when I've built all these other cars and things, she brought up the point that she'd like to get an FJ40, an old Land Cruiser, just to cruise around town, go to her parents' house, get groceries, whatever. And I started looking into them again. And I realized that over the last few years, the prices have just gotten completely insane for these things. I mean, now people want their weight in gold for a rotted out, parts truck in the backyard. There was a time when I bought 3 of them for $1,800 and drove 2 of them home. I mean, they were just a dime a dozen, not even 10 years ago, or about 10 years ago in any case. I guess, it wasn't a Jeep and people didn't really realize what they were and people really weren't into them. So now things are different. You got restored ones going at Barrett Jackson for $75,000, $80,000. You got parts trucks going for $5 or $7 grand. It's kind of ridiculous. But nonetheless, I've been looking for one to build for my wife. It's been tough. So I've been looking for it a few years. But in any case, flash forward a little bit. This is like 2 years ago. I was hanging out up in Vermont. In case you guys haven't noticed, I spend a lot of time hanging out up in Vermont. And I was at my uncle's place. And he mentioned, it was a rainy day. I had nothing to do. My dad was there. And he mentioned that he knew of an FJ40. He was cruising around recently and he found one. So I was like, hey, let's go look at it. He said it looked rotted out. It looked like it was real bad. But, those of you that are into these things or know anything about these things know that, when you come across a good deal on one of these things, you buy it because they're rare and now they're worth a lot of money. So we went and looked at it. And it was like a half hour away. So it was raining. So we went cruise down the road. And what I saw from the road is essentially the picture that is the thumbnail on this. I mean, I saw a beat up, rusty yard truck sitting in what turned out to be a goat pasture. I mean, it had clearly been sitting there a long time. It was missing a lot of parts. It had no rear axle. I could see that from the road. But nonetheless, I stopped at what was obviously the farmhouse. And it just so happened right when we pulled in, this woman came out. I introduced myself, told her I was looking at the Land Cruiser. She didn't really seem too enthusiastic about that. She said her husband wasn't home. And I asked her if I can go look at it anyway. So she said, go ahead. It was on the other side of the road, on the other side of a cemetery, which was kind of creepy and weird at the same time. So I wandered over there with my dad and my uncle, and this is basically what I saw. So the thing was it was beat to death. The door was open. It looked like the goats had been living inside it, maybe. The door had been open for a long time. The engine and transmission were sitting in the back of it. It had no rear axle, like I said. It had no front hubs. It was sunk to a point that I've never even witnessed before. I mean, this thing was really sunk in the dirt. But I was surprised because, I looked around the other side of it and I saw the fenders are decent. The bezel is decent. The bezels on these things are worth a good amount of money by themselves because they always rot out across the bottom. The hood was decent and the windshield frame was good. And it had a lot of good parts in it. So I was like, maybe I could save it, right? I mean, most of the bad stuff was sunk in the dirt, so I couldn't really tell how bad it was. It was bad. This thing, it didn't even run when parked, right? I mean, usually I like them when they ran when parked, so at least I know it was complete. This thing was dragged out here a long time ago. Nonetheless, I start walking back to the house, and a gentleman pulled in. Clearly, the husband, the owner of the thing, So I introduced myself. We got to talking. I asked him if he'd want to get rid of it, and he told me the story of it. It was a sentimental thing. It was his buddies who died, and they were, I think he said Vietnam War vets. They served together, and it had been sitting in that field for 20 years. And his son had one. It actually was put back there complete, but his son had a Landcruiser, and he's sniped some parts off it, the rear axle and some other stuff, I guess. So that's why it kind of got disassembled there. So the bottom line is, I played my case. I told him I might be able to save it, maybe. I can't really see enough of it, but I can get it out of there. And he was sympathetic. He gave it to me for free. He just gave it to me. He had a clean title and all that stuff, and gave it to me. So I came back like 3 weeks later with my dad and my uncle, expecting a battle to get that thing out of there. So I brought my Duramax I had at the time. I sold it. I brought my trailer. I brought an engine hoist so I could pull it up out of the dirt. I have a 12,000-pound winch on the trailer, so I was ready to pull it. And I brought some beams because we had this theory that maybe if we lifted it up with the engine hoist or a jack on pads and things and got it up out of the dirt, we could put the beams under it and then winch it up the beams. If you put them under the axle tubes, maybe we'd get it and like turn it into kind of a sled and get it on the trailer. I knew it was going to be a pain in the butt, but I didn't think it was going to be nearly what it was. So we started digging at it, and this thing was buried, guys. I've never seen anything like it before. The rear hubs were like 10 inches into the dirt. I mean, the leaf springs were just gone, buried. You can see here, we had to dig down. We were trying to find the trailer hitch so I could hook up to it with the engine hoist and just pull the whole rear of the truck up out. And the trailer hitch, the top of the trailer ball was like 8 inches down underground and like grown over and grass grown over it and stuff. I mean, this thing was really buried. So long story short, I got it up on the trailer. It was a fantastic day working with my dad and my 2 uncles up there, which you gotta love those days. You don't get too many of them, not as many as I'd like in any case. So it was fun. Got it up on the trailer. It took about 6 hours to get it out of the dirt, out of the goat pasture and up on the trailer. And I got it out of there. Now, next thing was I brought it back to my uncle's house up in Vermont, which is like a half hour from where he found it. And we're sitting there looking at this thing sitting on the trailer. And like, guys, it is so rotted out. I mean, I had to stop on the highway because my uncle was driving behind me and he told me the engine was coming out of the back of it. So like it was just tearing the whole back of the body off and falling out on the highway. So I had to put a bunch of straps over it and stuff. And it was pretty clear when I got it back to the shop that like maybe I could save it. I mean, you could save anything if it was like my life's work. But I have other problems. I got the Evil 7 behind me. That's a project. I got the Willies you guys have seen. The Honey Badger's about done now but needs work still. And I have some other things that I want to build that I want to get onto. So I didn't want to turn this into like a lifelong thing or a 10-year thing. Not to mention my wife really wanted it, so I wanted to move it along. So I was pretty much resigned myself to its parts and maybe a VIN number if it comes down to it. So the weird thing is though, I stayed the night up there. The next morning, I'm just laying in bed. I didn't feel like getting up yet. And I hop on my phone and I get on Craigslist and I start looking for Landcruisers, and I found this thing, which was a 73, I think, frame that someone did a lot of work to. They did power steering, a Saginaw box up front, like what my Jeep has, very similar. They did a reverse shackle lift. They did a lot of stuff. It had a 350 in it. It had a TH350 in it. It had a Toyota transfer case. It had a newer disc brake front axle out of like a 78 or newer. I think it's 78 and newer, have a disc brakes. Maybe someone could chime in on that. It was really cool. Like it had all the good stuff for a daily. But the best thing is it had a fiberglass body on it, and it was a project. So I identified immediately that the tub was made by a company called Mallet, because I used to be into these things pretty heavy. There's like 3 different fiberglass tub manufacturers, Mallet being the worst. I don't think they even make them anymore, but they were pretty flimsy. But nonetheless, I couldn't avoid it. I mean, the thing had 35s on it and stuff, like these ridiculous wheels. Obviously, you can see that, I'm not going to keep. But it had enough good parts, and it had a VIN number too, a good frame. It was a great start. Great axles, transfer case, tranny, So that was in Atlantic City, like 7 hours south of where I was in Vermont. So that morning, I got in my Duramax, I packed my stuff up, I came back down to my house in Connecticut. I got in my daily driver with my girlfriend then, now wife, and we drove straight through to Atlantic City. And I went and looked at this thing because the price, guys, I don't remember what the guy was asking, but I made a deal with him and I bought it for $1,000. The whole thing. I mean, that tub is like $4,000 or $4,500 new. And like Landcruiser parts are worth a fortune. You know, disc brake front axles are $400 or $500. So basically got away with murder on that one. So now I'm sitting here with 2 chassis, one rotted out complete truck, one fiberglass body that needs work, strengthening, structural problems maybe, that's modified. And I was trying to figure out what I was going to do. On the surface, maybe I would like just put the fiberglass tub on the original truck. I don't know. But I started looking at the original truck and the frame was pretty shot. I mean, I can fix that. You can fix almost anything with a frame. I've done some pretty crazy frame repairs. I'm a big Toyota guy, so I've had 3rd gen 4Runners and things and Tacomas. And I think everyone's aware of what happens to those frames. So I've done a lot of frame repairs in my time. But I started thinking about it and I realized that what I really want to do is build her like a daily drivable off-road rig. So automatic, but like a V8, so it's drivable. The 2F engines are freaking fantastic, but it's more like driving a tractor than it is driving a vehicle. So I didn't think she'd be into it. Basically, I wanted to do everything I could do to make sure that she would be into this thing, that she wanted to drive it. So I started looking at the one I bought in Atlantic City as a chassis, and then I would just take parts off the parts truck from Vermont. So I started looking at it when I got home, and I realized, I mean, I don't want, you know, a TBI 350 that's in it, so I got rid of that. I sold it. I did keep the TH 350 because I think that's a good option. And then I started looking at how they did like the power steering, the Saginaw box and stuff, which you can see here. I mean, maybe on the surface it looked okay, but they had these weird frame extensions that I, for the life of me, can't figure out. And they actually bolted the box to a mount and then welded the mount to the frame in such a way that you could never unbolt the box again. I mean, the screws were backed into the frame. So it was just ridiculous. It was silly. So I started redoing that. So I pulled the body off, the fiberglass body that is. I sold the 350, like I said. I pulled the trans out. Also, it had a crazy trans cross member. I forgot about that. So I started doing some fab work. This is like last summer of 2019. So what I did was I cut the frame extensions off that I didn't understand in the first place. I fabricated my own power steering box mount out of, I don't know, 1/4-inch steel plate and some like machine spacers and stuff. So that actually turned out absolutely fantastic. I backed it into the frame back to where I know geometrically it's supposed to go because I've done these before. I have one on the Jeep, and I did it on one of my other Land Cruisers actually 10 years ago or so. I fabricated a new transmission cross member out of square tubing with a good, you know, urethane mount and everything. I finished welding the shackle reversal kit because they just never finished it. I think they bolted it in like 2 places and then like spot welded it. It was real sketchy. So I finished all that and redid it, got it all good. And then I stripped it all apart, sandblasted the frame, and pour 15 to the entire thing. So that was basically where we were at that point. Then I started putting the fiberglass body back onto it, get it fitted appropriately and get it in the right spot. I went and bought a 4.8 LS engine because I had decided at that point that I'm going to go with a fuel-injected, you know, Gen 3 LS. They're dead simple. I know them. You know, I've been through a bunch of them in the RX-7 here. I've done swaps into other things. I actually already modified a harness to be standalone, which maybe I can show you guys some of that later, not in this video. Unfortunately, I didn't videotape it because that would be a great tutorial for everyone. But I did do that already, so that's in there. And then I bolted it to the TH350 without the torque converter. I still need to get a torque converter. And then I started stripping parts off the parts truck that I got from Vermont and put it on there. Seeing what I got and what I don't have. I found another guy for some parts. Went up to his house to get those parts, and he had a 76, I think, Land Cruiser in his backyard that had a 350 and a 4-speed that ran and drove. And it had the jump seats in the back in good condition. And the jump seats are really rare and really expensive. They're not rare, but they're expensive. So I bought that for $500, running and driving. It was rotted out too, but I bought the whole truck. You can see that here. And then towed it home, stripped the jump seats out of it, took a couple other parts and got rid of that. I think I sold it for $1,000. So I made out well on that. I got the jump seats for $500 in the black. And then I went and got up in Maine some doors and windshield frame and all kinds of stuff. So that's where the red body panels come from, because I knew I wanted the newer 76 and up door panels because they're nicer, and doors and steering column and some other things. So I started putting all that together. And that's basically where we're at right now. So the thing's sitting on a trailer outside my shop, just to the left. Like I said, I'm sure you guys have seen it in a bunch of different videos. And I wanted to introduce it to you guys, but the problem was I really wanted to tell the story of how I got it, because it's kind of ridiculous. And it's something I'm going to remember for a long time, because it was a hell of a day spent with my dad and my uncles digging the stupid thing out of the dirt. And now we're going to build it for my wife. So it's going to be a heck of a project. There's a lot to do. There's going to be, LS swap stuff, adapting to the old transmission stuff, adapting a new fuel system. We're going to do a lot of fiberglass work on that tub. I've already done some really cool things as far as stiffening up the doors and things that I'd love to show you guys. I haven't finished it, so there's a lot of billet parts to make on the mill over there. It's going to be a big thing. And the reason why I'm introducing it right now is because it's getting cold here in Connecticut, and the honey badger doesn't fit in the shop. So the next video you guys are going to see is after this is going to be working on the honey badger. I was actually working on it today. I ran out of some parts, so this kind of has to come first. And then the FJ40 is coming into this shop, and we're digging in. And that's what we're going to be doing all winter. My wife and I got married last August, and it was a pandemic wedding. I'm sure some of you out there have had them or been to them. So it was a small thing. So I'm looking to try to get this done for our first anniversary next year. And some of you guys are probably wondering why I would say that, if it's going to be a surprise for her because she's going to see this. But there's just no doing something like that without her noticing. So she knows, and she'll be working with me on it, so it'll be interesting. So that's pretty much that for today, guys. I'm sorry. I'm sure this was boring for some of you, but I had to tell the story. I didn't want to just bring it in here and not tell the backstory because I think it's interesting and fun. So I'll show you guys more on this thing, not next week, but the week after. Again, next week's going to be, I'm doing some really cool stuff on the air system on the honey badger out there. And then it's just going to be FJ40 all the way through the winter, with the exception the Evil 7 is getting a new motor. I have it on a stand about 5 feet to my right. So that's going to be interesting. It's an aluminum block 5.3. It is freshly built. It's going in there. I'm going to add some things, a sheet metal intake and stuff like that. So stick around for that also. That's going to be really interesting because we're going to put it on the dyno immediately after. But otherwise, you guys can pretty much expect nothing but FJ40 videos for the next, 2 months or 3 months until it starts getting warmer outside. Also, we're probably going to do something about the shop, because you can see around me the shop is an absolute disaster area still. My new toolbox hasn't showed up. I'm still going to insulate and sheetrock before I really start digging into the Landcruiser, so there'll probably be a video on that. But other than that, guys, thank you for watching. Go subscribe, because we have a lot of stuff coming on this FJ40 and the Honey Badger and the Evil 7, and the Willies is coming up soon. So go subscribe, hit the notification bell, comment below, tell me what you're thinking, and I'll see you guys next week.